Hello and welcome to today's video. So this time we're going to be taking a look at the books and comics that were released for one of my all-time favourite 80s TV shows, V. So there's a lot of good stuff in here, which is what I'm going to be showing you today. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. So this is the very first V book by A.C. Crispin. Now, if, like me, you're of a certain age and you were growing up in the 80s, you cannot have failed to have picked up on what was the TV event of sort of around 1984. I remember this really kicking in at the end of the Olympics that year. In the UK, that was when V first aired. They would do coverage of the Olympics and then it would be on at a ridiculous time, like 11 or 12 o'clock until like 2 in the morning, that original miniseries. And I remember struggling to stay up. I had school the next day, but there was no way I was going to miss such a big sci-fi event such as V. Thankfully, very easy to watch these days on rerun, and it has been released multiple times on DVD, so not difficult to find. Like any great series back then, it spawned its own set of TV tie-ins, and there was quite a few of these. In the UK, we didn't actually get the last 5 novels, and those have proved very elusive for me to track down in later years. I've got them all now, so I am more than happy to show you every single issue. These are not all first editions. In fact, this one here, which was everywhere, is the best copy I've got, but it's actually a 10th printing. And you'll notice in the UK, they were published by NEL, the New England Library. Over in the States, they were by Pinnacle, and then the last few were published by Tor. Now, I don't really want to go into the detail about all the ins and outs of all the different plots with these, but basically this one and the follow-up, which was called East Coast Crisis, basically summarise the original miniseries as well as the final battle. What happened was, when the authors were trying to put these together, the TV series Bible hadn't really been written properly, so they were just basing it on quite basic information. But pretty soon, come the end of 1984 into 1985, the series was a hit. There was a TV series on the way, so some of these books are set sort of in between the end of the miniseries and then the start of the TV series. This is an example. So this is the British Pursuit of Diana, and that's the American edition, the Pinnacle books. So obviously a slightly different cover design there, but the book is the same inside. That's number 3, which is Pursuit of Diana. Obviously Jane Badler was one of the big draws back in the day for that series. Book number 4 was the Chicago Conversion, George Proctor. As I said, this is the UK edition. As far as I know, the books were released in many languages. I think maybe 6 languages. So there's lots of different editions for you to collect if you really want to. This one's called The Florida Project. This is book number 5. And then book number 6 was Prisoners and Pawns. I remember really enjoying this one. And this is the first book that's actually set during the TV series. So those initial ones, they novelised the miniseries. Then it's the period before the TV series starts. And then Prisoners and Pawns is the first one, which is set during that the sadly short-lived TV show. And that's book number 6. Book number 7 is The Alien Swordmaster. Still UK editions of these. And book number 8 is The Crivet Experiment. I don't know if you remember the crivets. So number 9 is the New England Resistance. As I said, some of these I've had literally for years, since they came out back in the 80s. And others I've had to struggle when now we've got the definitive lists of these. I've struggled to find copies, but as I said, I've got them all now. So that was number 9. Number 10 is Death Tide. And this is a US edition of this one, although it did come out over in Britain. Next one is the Texas run. So this is book number 11. Quite a cool little cover, that one. It's Pinnacle again. So even though these apparently did come out in the UK, I've not seen UK editions, so maybe that is incorrect. And the New England Resistance was the last of the British editions. Then these last 5 definitely did not get published in Britain, and they were published by Tor in America. A slightly different cover design. There we are, first publication in any form, and these are all scarce. I would class these as scarce. So this is number 12, which is called Path to Conquest. Number 13, To Conquer the Throne. Oregon Invasion, so this is number 14. Number 15, Below the Threshold. So very, very scarce, these, so I'm just happy to have them in any form, to be honest. Particularly scarce in the UK. And the very last one that got released was this one called Symphony of Terror. And just see the authors all vary. They don't keep. There isn't just one author writing these. And this last one was published in May 1988, when I guess the series had just about had its run. So that's all the tie-in, TV tie-in novelizations. Now, V was very, very popular in Britain, and that spawned the traditional British annual. So I don't know if you've ever come across a British annual before, but this is what they're like, and they're hardback, and they're generally full of, like, well, we'll see comic strips, photos, and short stories. And this was the one that was released in the UK. So as you can see, it's sort of a pretty typical annual so far. Puzzles, sort of the odd board game. So this one's there's a comic strip there. It's a little bit lacking in photographs, except there's a little word search. So literally just a handful of photos at the front and on the front end paper. But this one was published by World Distributors, a big annual publisher in the UK, in 1986. And also it had a V storybook. Now this was published published for BHS, which in the UK was British Home Stores, a department store that's no longer with us. And storybooks generally just contain just that, short stories. So I doubt we'll have much in the way of photographs, but let's take a look anyway. Oh, there's one there. Oh yeah, there we are. So it's not too bad. We do get a couple of stills of the main cast by the look of it. In fact, you could almost say that they did a better job on this one than they did with the official annual, to be honest, because that's actually a really nice little publication. Yeah, published exclusively for British Home Stores. It's copyrighted in 1984, but I believe it came out a year after that, so actually prior to the V annual. And also, while we're looking at the large format books, were these. Now, these were the V files. I seem to remember around this time in the mid-80s, there was like a files magazine for all manner of TV shows. So Doctor Who and Star Trek had the Man from U.N.C.L.E. V itself had 6. Sadly, I've only got the 2, and that's basically James Van Heiss's breakdown of The Arrival in 2 parts, and they are absolutely full of information. So I do think they're worth tracking down. However, sadly, they're quite expensive. I looked into getting the missing 4, and of the ones that I actually found, I didn't find any for sale, but of the ones I actually found, they tended to have sold for like $30 a pop. So I'm going to have to wait and see if I get lucky at a fair or something to get those, because they are quite expensive. Now, the last thing we're going to look at today is the rather nice run of DC Comics V. So, first of all, I will just show this one, which is actually a foreign language one. The V comic was translated into a lot of different languages. I'm just trying to have a look and see. This is a French one. So that's quite nice, isn't it? I'm not sure which issue. I think it's one towards the end. So that's a nice little French edition of a V comic there, which is quite nice. But then the first of the DC run is this one. Now, these are not difficult to get hold of. They certainly weren't difficult at the time. They were called a bargain bin comic. This one's dated February 85. Quality varies a little bit on these, and it did only run until July 1986. And the stories are sort of, they run with events that are part of the VTV show rather than the initial mini-series. And I think this is quite a nice fun run to get your hands on. I can't imagine you'd have a job getting these now. Some big names there. Carmine Infantino, one of my favourite comic book artists. Number 4 there. Number 5. A bit of fun, these. I mean, I remember getting them at the time and enjoying them. Number 6 there. It's a nice cover. Number 7. Eight and 9. Always remember that one very well. Diana and Lydia. Number 10. Number 11. I've got to say, it's such a shame that this didn't run a bit longer beyond the TV show, but it was either the sales were declining and they just got cancelled, or they thought because there was no new TV show on, that interest would eventually wane, and that's probably what happened. That's my suspicion of what happened. It's number 15 there. Number 16. Number 17, and this is like rounding the series off. And then number 18, and these two are actually like a flashback, and it does say the final issue. So the decision was made, but the story leads right into the very last episode of the TV show. So they do round it off quite nicely, and really nice little DC run, that one, and worth getting your hands on. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed looking through these V books and comics. It certainly was a bit of a trip through memory lane for me. If you have enjoyed the video, do please give it a thumbs up, and do please consider subscribing for regular sci-fi, book and comic content going forward. Thanks once again for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.